Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Consulting Trap. I'm your host, Brian Maddox. With me today is Ryan Alford from the Radcast. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, Brian. Good to be here. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Happy to have you. So if you could tell us a little bit more about how you got into what you're doing, what you're up to, and then we can go from there. That'd be great.
Yeah, man. I mean, my day job now is running an ad agency. We're in Greenville, South Carolina, a booming little city, actually, if you've never heard of it. And don't move here because there's too many people moving here.
And hey, you kids, get off my lawn.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful place, great place to raise a family. Married, 4 boys, young boys, and coaching, doing all that stuff. But grew up in the ad business. I went to Clemson and been in the ad agency marketing game for 20 plus years, aged myself a little bit. And I started Radical, my own agency, 5 years ago after I moved back I lived in New York. I was on Madison Avenue doing the New York thing, like any good ad guy, I guess. And so spent a long career working on some of the largest brands in the world, and now help more probably medium-sized companies at our agency Radical, and started our podcast, the Radcast, the studio I'm in today. At the same time, we started Radical. And we just recorded episode 300 and have a top 25 pretty consistent marketing show on both Spotify and Apple. So, yeah, man, there's a lot in between, but that's the short and the sweet of it.
Yeah, the highlights film is great. So, and congratulations on episode 300. That is no joke, a serious achievement. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
So you picked up a lot of things along the way, clearly in the big ad world, but you're also bringing that to the table for the guys in the middle. So I want to hear a little bit more about what that looks like and what that means, because a lot of folks view advertising now as like, well, I'm going to throw $500 at YouTube, and that clearly doesn't cut it. So if you can tell me a little bit more about like, how do you know when your business is right for the kind of advertising that you're talking about?
Yeah, man. I guess I'll give you a little bit of my philosophy and some of the things, that I've worked on. I mean, in New York, I worked on some of the largest brands in the world, a lot of Verizon wireless business, kind of ushering them from relatively unknown in 2000, 2001. Again, dating myself, working on Can You Hear Me Now? One of the most recognizable ad campaigns in history, and helping usher them into the smartphone age. Worked on the first iPhone launch, worked on Droid, worked on any of the many plethora of smartphone launches, the LG chocolate, the BlackBerry X, Y, or Z, every major phone that's had a name or a moniker. I did work on those campaigns in, the 2000s, and, also worked with many other name brands, Lexus, Audi on the automotive side, worked with Samsung Electronics. So again, you've seen it on TV, there's a good chance that I worked on part of a campaign, at least, the last 10, 15 years, some of the more recognizable when TV was more popular. There wasn't so many streaming options, but it's been a great ride. And, it really set the foundation for me with my belief on two sides, that we've grown into, and like the companies we help now, this world where everybody's driving for performance. And we understand that everyone needs outcomes. Marketing needs to assist sales and help tee up sales. I say marketing writes the checks that sales cashes. And ultimately, there's two sides, though, to marketing for me. I mean, there's a million and it's complex, but you have to have brand and you have to drive demand. And we've moved into this world where people are leaving out the brand part, and they think that they can just cheat and get to the bottom of the funnel by just marketing the promotion, by just selling the offer, by just doing speeds and feeds and feature sets. When in reality, it's been proven and tested, and billions of dollars spent proving that you need long-term and short-term marketing and branding to have long-term success. There's a term that I like to call, it's called short-termism. And that's the disease that we're facing today, where everybody, CMOs have the shortest job spans of anyone in the C-suite at most companies because their feet are held to the fire. and they're forced to make performance-driven decisions that impact the brand. So what I do is I really counsel companies that we work with that you have to invest in the brand over time, sales overnight. And so you have to have a two-pronged strategy. And depending on the company, we go at different strategies for how you elevate brand in today's world. It used to be television because you had mass awareness. You still do. TV's not dead. But the mediums have changed into these digital, avenues. You mentioned YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. There's a million social channels. There's a blend of these things, but the messages that you put out have to be a blend of making people think and feel something versus just wanting them to do, which is buy. And so we really counsel them on that. And it's been an effective formula over the years.
That's awesome. I want to dig in a little bit on that, if that's all right.
Please.
When it comes to understanding and building, you talked about the emotional content, which is really important. Essentially, finding out where somebody is in that funnel and marketing to them. We talk about the funnel. We talk about sales and marketing as sales is or marketing's top of the funnel, sales is bottom of the funnel, whatever. Whatever reality you want to kind of framework you want to work with there. But when it comes to understanding where to address the market space, there's obviously no one answer, right? You have to create content that speaks to every one of those levels. How does that inform the advertising as well?
Yeah. I like to say people think with their head and they buy with their heart. And so emotion plays a big role. And you nailed it. And everyone is not buying today. No matter what you sell, people are not, every single person that might be your available audience is not in the same period. Whether it's a B2B purchase, buying office equipment, buying a SaaS or software, maybe they're in early shopping mode or information gathering. And so you've got to put out content or ads or whatever insert name you want to call it. I prefer content because everything's sort of content and it's not all ad-like objects. It's putting out content to feed that full funnel. So you got to put out informational brochure type content that tells your story, that makes people understand why they should buy from you, that gives maybe your founder's story. Maybe it gives more information on how you treat your people, combined with, obviously, the solutions that you bring. What you have to do is I like to evangelize the problem that the customer has versus the solution that we do. And so depending on where they are in that customer journey, you've got to kind of be feeding all the parts of it. And look, you need to have out there too, when you've got, if you're a SaaS or something, and then what's your best price or first 2 months free? Yeah, you get into offer and those things. So you do have to feed the bottom of the funnel for sales, but you do have to be nurturing and putting content out that's readily available for those that are both exploring and searching for you or those that you're interrupting. Because here's what's going on. Ads are always interrupting, right? We're breaking through. If you're on YouTube, I'm trying to get to that how do I build a frame video? And this stupid ad's coming up, it's getting in the way. Right. So you're always interrupting a bit with ads. But when people go to search you out, when they start their discovery phase, your website, the content that you have there, that you play, the video that plays when someone comes to your site is a much more thoughtful exercise and can be longer form content because people are exploring you and investing time in you. And when you're interrupting with ads at the bottom of the funnel, you've got to be just conscientious of that and know the types of formats to run to leverage that attention.
So is there, I understand completely that the funnels are artificial, right? We create them and we think, okay, look, there's a level 1, a level 2, level 3, and consumers don't neatly fall into piles like that. It would be wonderful, but that's not the case. But is there a place in the funnel where there's like I understand like a cost benefit analysis kind of stuff, like you spoke about it a little bit earlier, like folks are looking for that, those marketing managers looking for that like instant turnaround. Is $10 at the bottom of the funnel and $10 at the top of the funnel? Is that the same thing? And what's the difference?
Yeah. And I think you're kind of talking ROI. Here's the formula because it gets messy. I do a 60-40, a 60-40 formula. Like it, and it varies, but it doesn't vary. It might go to 70-30 and it might go to, I don't know, 50-50, but 50%, at least 60% on brand activity, 40% on sales performance activity. So again, things that elevate your brand, that build a long-term resonance in someone's mind, a memory, a reason to buy you when they're ready. 60% of budget on that. And it's been proven over time. There's literally books on this about, if you Google short-termism, you could kind of find this stuff. But there's been study about the long-term effects of branding and the budgets that you apply towards them and the percentages and where the best amount of investments and where you fall off, and where it'll show you literally this grid where, or the chart where if you just did performance for like 8 months, your sales are great, right? But then there's this drop off the face of the earth because you've gobbled up the readily available audience that was buying then, right? And you haven't nurtured the top of the funnel so that when people are then ready to buy, they don't know enough, or they haven't discovered you enough or researched you enough that they're not just going to respond to an offer. And so there's literally studies on this, and it gets hard. Back to your exact question, the $10 here, the $10 there. I think of it more through a total budget over a period of time, and where and how you spend certain amounts, and knowing that you have to trust the science and trust the data at the end of the day, because these companies like an e-commerce brand that turns on, they think if they open the doors that sales are just going to rocket, or they just can run unlimited Facebook ads and get a return on ad spend. Those days are over. Like that, 2013, 2014, you could kind of do that. Open an e-com store, as long as you had your fulfillment in order, you had a good product, you could just run Facebook ads and boom, 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 boom. It just doesn't work that way anymore. That was kind of a short window. So we're back to the old school where you've got to build brand and build awareness and build intent, and then close them when you got a good promotion.
Right. So is there and I think you raise an important point. The brand development part of that conversation is something that doesn't start the engines right away. And so is there a time that becomes like a flywheel and you can slow down on the brand development, or is that like forever and ever, amen?
Forever and ever, amen. It's you have to, because look, I'll give you the example. Don't trust my opinion. Trust Coke, trust Verizon, trust Budweiser, Bud Light. If Bud Light turned off 80% of their TV ads for 2 months, their sales would drop at least 40%. There's a reason that they're buying so much space. They have to stay top of mind. When you're a mass product, look, it's a different game for B2B. So I mean, I'm giving examples of like mass, Coca-Cola, Budweiser, those kind of things. But it's different, but related even to B2B and other things, because you have everyone vying for attention in sales. There's competition in everything. And so if you let off the gas of keeping top line awareness in whatever you do, you have to have that drumbeat. And that's how I used to describe it for clients. You got that steady drumbeat in the back. That's your brand. It's always hitting, reminding, awareness, boom, 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 boom. And you have to keep it on. And if you stop that, the beat stops. The awareness stops eventually. It's probably not month one, because I've done this to these exercises with companies like big brands where they go, oh, we'll stop that. We'll stop. And look, in 30 days in, like, look, we stopped it. It hadn't done anything. 3 months later, sales are tanking. And They're like, why is it tanking? What did we do?
Yeah.
Like, well, you turn the brand drumbeat off.
Yeah. And it's too late to turn it back on. It's not going to immediately solve for X, right?
No, it's going to take you 3 more months to get back to where you were.
So it sounds like there's probably a ratio in there that, you said 60-40, where, if you're just starting out, you can start with that, high transactional stuff to get some revenue in the door, and then move to more of a brand building approach as you go.
That's exactly right. That's the approach that I push with startups. You just described it perfectly.
So with where you're at now, I mean, you've now turned your own business into that kind of model with the Radcast and stuff like that. How has that informed what you're doing? I mean, I imagine it all speaks to that same lesson.
I eat my own dog food. I know that's not the sexiest thing to say, but I do. And so I practice and have practiced for 5 years exactly what I preach to companies. With Radical, I've played the long game. Like day one, I did 3 things with Radical. So I'd done a lot in the industry. I was social, but I wouldn't say socially popular or anything like that. But when I started Radical, I did 3 things. Started investing in agency marketing, of course. I started the podcast with, it was just purely funded by me and creating a strategy and a structure and commitment to it. But, starting a podcast, there was 2 listeners the first 2 months, and then my personal brand. So I invested in all 3 of those things equally and started, and then really the Radcast and my personal brand sort of became the marketing pillars for Radical, like the investment in. And so started putting out content. I'd been in the game. I had a lot to share. So it wasn't like I didn't have something to say or I was trying to look cool in front of a car with nothing to say,
It wasn't, you weren't making stuff up.
Yeah, I wasn't making stuff up. I just started sharing my point of view and my thought leadership across social media. And then the podcast, doing the same thing while having guests and improving guests and staying committed. And it was things. And I think I may have mentioned to you before, if you put these things all on a line grid with time, investment, and then revenue, in some way, shape, or form, showing those things, all 3 are on this upward trajectory of the last 5 years. The growth in followers and engagement on the podcast, now being top 25 in the world. Some weeks, it's really weird algorithms on the charts. I can never figure it out. One week we're 114, and the next week we're number 9. I'm like, what changed? Anyway, but I digress. Then my personal brand, doing content, video, constantly being available, engaging with people, doing those things. And so now I'm verified on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I'm, a marketing influencer according to Google. And then the podcast has grown, and we've gone from obscure guests that I love and appreciate and that were great in their own way to celebrities and founders and famous people that are started cool brands, and the podcast numbers have gone with it, and the agency revenue's gone up because 8 out of 10 leads come from my personal brand or the podcast. And I would say mainly the podcast because that's usually what they reference, when we ask them. So and I do a lot of shows like these, and then of course the Radcast, twice a week. So it's been an interesting ride, but I would say 80% of our leads are from brand activity and not promotional or, hey, we got a good deal going, a social media package for $9.99. No, we never do that. It's all driven by the brand and me just sharing thought leadership and sharing knowledge, and them going, okay, he seems like a nice guy. He knows what he's talking about. So I've been living what I preach.
And that lets you do a couple things, right? So first things first, you do fall into a rhythm, which makes it cheaper over time, right? Yeah. So the production cost in the beginning is relative to your learning costs, right? Which is superb. And the other part of it that it does is as you start to build that brand awareness, you get to charge more.
That's right. Yes. I mean, we're a boutique agency, and we're affordable as boutique agencies go for South Carolina. We're not a New York agency. We don't try to act like one, and we don't have the overhead of one. So we can provide good value, but we are not also the cheapest. And we don't have to be.
Not anymore, right?
No.
In the beginning, you feel like this outrageous pressure to just get revenue in the door.
Oh, yeah.
And that pressure makes you make sacrifices and stuff like that. But building the brand, I think, is a great way to offset some of that because you'll have folks that are, beating down the door going, hey, listen, I like the way you approach solving this problem. Let's have you do that for us. And you go, well, maybe that costs a little more this time.
Yeah, you have to.
So when did that kind of pivot happen for you, where you were a little bit more instead of pull, customers just started coming in?
It took some time. I mean, it was probably, if we've been doing, it'll be 5 years in May. So, we're a little over 4.5, I guess, if I'm doing it, or right at 4.5. Probably 18 months to 2 years, where, and there was none. So again, none of these things are like, we stopped having to do outbound and all inbound like this exact day. It was a build over time, but like, you could really feel it 18, 24 months in, that it was happening. It's working. It's working.
And it's crazy when it does, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, because what's really interesting there is when it flips, you think it's something you did the day before. You're not thinking it's something you did 18 months ago.
Hey, that's why single click attribution is the worst science ever, because they think that first click is that's the only time they knew anything about. They don't attribute any value to the brand. It's just maybe they've been researching you for 6 months and watching your website and looking at all this content, but today they clicked on a pay-per-click ad.
Yeah, right. Well, and so there's some strategy there too, right? Like, how much can you offload the customer education process onto your competitors, so that you only get them when they're hungry to buy. But to your point, that's probably a good short-term but horrible long-term strategy, because they don't build the relationship with you.
That's right. And I don't cloud my brain with too many other like outside, like I read a lot and I consume a lot, and it's not that I don't have mentors or things like that, but Christopher Lochhead's one of my like true mentors, and just everything that comes out of his mouth is like, it naturally aligns with kind of my thinking anyway. And he's known as like the category pirate. He develops he believes in category development and not, competing. So, he would, if you were Pepsi if you were someone like Pepsi today, he would say that's the dumbest idea ever, trying to compete with someone that owns the category like a Coke. And it's not to say that you can't be successful. He believes in, reframing the category. And when you reframe the category, you market the category and not yourself. And, because you don't have to market your brand, you market the category because you own the category, because you're the category starter.
Right. So, it's blue ocean strategy kind of stuff, right?
It is. It's a spin on that for sure. And so that's baked into my approach a little bit as well. And kind of what I did with Radical, with the podcast or anything like that. Like, it may sound cliche now, but no ad agency has a podcast as popular as ours, period, end of story. And so, or the numbers, and that's a difference in and of itself.
Yeah. That's awesome. I want to thank you for your time today and being on the show. I think I think our listeners are probably at this point going, please turn the fire hose off.
It is a lot. I mean, I can go.
Yeah, we're not talking about some light stuff here, right?
No,
redevelop your strategy. I'll be done in 10 minutes. Yeah, good luck with that. So this is the kind of stuff that you have to process, and it does take time. I like a lot of what you brought to the table here when it comes to how this works and setting timelines and expectations. I think it's really going to help the folks that are listening. Thank you for that. How can folks reach out to you when they want to learn more about what you're doing and how you might be able to help them out?
Yeah. So there's, I don't want to give too many, but I'll, super simple is ryanalford.com, ALFORD. And you can go there. So if you're listening, and I have reverse engineered my exact process for building a personal brand and a podcast. That course is actually launching next week. So good timing, depending on when this airs and listens. So it'll be fully launched, I'm sure, when your guests here. But if you're someone who wants to work with our agency, radical.company is our website, and you can learn all about us.
Awesome. And clearly you've picked up a lot of things in your travels here. But as you kind of punch out the door, we want to give you the Columbo chance to say the three things or ask the question. What are the three things you picked up along the way that you might think that our listeners could profit from?
Yeah. Businesses are built over time, not overnight. The three keys to success are risk tolerance, curiosity, and availability. You got to be available. You got to be ready and available to take on new things, to push yourself further. You got to be curious. If you aren't naturally curious, you will not go far. And if you aren't risk tolerant, get the hell out of business because you got to be able to put it all in. Because if you aren't, that just means you don't have all the chips on the table and you aren't really going to get where you want to go.
And you'll get out-risked by somebody else.
That's right.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Ryan.
Hey, Brian, my pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Consulting Trap. If you have suggestions for future episodes or would like to be a guest on our show, please send me an email at brian@podcastchef.com. That's BRIAN at podcastchef.com. Before we go, we'd like to thank the sponsor of our show, Podcast Chef. Podcast Chef helps turn ordinary podcasting into a revenue-generating lead magnet for your consulting business. Our Podcasting Done For You service takes away the headache of starting up and running your own podcast. Reach out now to take advantage of our 30-day money-back guarantee. Visit us at podcastchef.com to find out how our team of experts can help you leverage podcasting to take your business to the next level.